Hey everyone, welcome to Crossroads Conversations with the Lewis Brothers, where we aim to share real stories about running a successful family business, working through adversity, and pouring back into the community that keeps our doors open. We're your hosts, Taylor, Matt, and Shelby, and we'll bring you relevant local business advice and automotive insights that are sure to change the way you look at running a business, and may even throw in a plug for you to do business with us.
Welcome back to Crossroad Conversations, episode 32, kicking this thing into gear. Hey, this is our first time in our own recording studio.
I know. Not only episode 32, we've been planning and talking about this for a long time.
Yeah, so not only 32 weeks, but like years and years and years and years before that. So if you're wondering where we're at, we're on campus in Fayetteville. We're in our Death Star, as you might call it. It's a 3-story black building, and we're in our own podcast recording studio with our own team doing all the stuff. So you're fired up.
I would say shout out to Podcast Videos, though. They really helped us, get everything going here. We had this idea, and they helped us really put the traction into it and the setup and what equipment we needed and software, so on and so forth. So shout out to our partners up there at Podcast Videos.
Yeah, so if it looks different, sounds different, or if there's a spot where we run out of audio or video, we're figuring it out, and that's part of small business, right?
That really is.
So today we dive into Crossroad moments, pivoting your business within a niche for the future. And so we're going to dissect that and kind of figure out how to stay relevant, to find that little niche in the business, to continue to be relevant for that consumer to come to you, whether they've never done business with you or if they've continued to do business with you, that it continues to stay fun and exciting and how you're helpful to others. So we'll fully dissect that.
All right, before we get started, we got to talk about last week's episode. So if you didn't hear it, make sure to go back and check it out. That was about developing the leader inside of you. We talked a lot about, a guy we listened to is Craig Groeschel. He always talks about, everybody wins when the leader gets better. We went through the journey of how each of us make sure that not only did we get better 10 years ago, but how do we get better yesterday? And then how do we challenge our team and team leads to do that as well? Because we know that you're either moving forward or you're moving back. You're never staying the same. So that's a big deal to us, is to make sure as the lead and as the pace setter that we are pushing our business forward, both evolving work ethic and then new systems and new procedures to move our business forward.
Absolutely. Hey, and always be sure and check us out at lewissuperstore.com or on crossroadsconversationpodcast.com. Hey, what did we drive today? Well, you know what? We kind of walked over, so we didn't necessarily drive, but I got to talk about, we've talked about the Maverick several weeks ago. We just got something that dropped in.
Okay.
This thing is so sweet. It's the Maverick Lobo, and it is absolutely positioned to the whole community there. It has the wheels, it has the look, it's lowered, sport, everything else. You got to check it out. This one is in black, but looks like you should be cruising up and down the beach somewhere headed to a car.
It's a whole different grill. It's got different emblems. It's two-tone interior with the stitching and Lobo embossed in the seats, different tail lights and headlamps. Like you said, it's lowered.
Yes.
So they kind of took a scene out of, I believe, the Hispanic and Latino, and they kind of took in the sport truck scene, and they meshed it together with the affordable, fuel-efficient, fun Maverick. And it's a Maverick Lobo. It's pretty sweet.
It's sweet.
I mean, the fuel economy on those things are amazing. People still have all the storage in the bed. I hear it time and time again. I didn't realize how much I was going to love this truck from customers because of the ease of being able to park, being able to maneuver, yet it's a crew cab, and it's got the bed space. And it's got some tow capacity too. So if you want to tow a jet ski, your small fishing boat, or a lawnmower, it can handle all that.
Hey, and first for this year, 25, they now stack the hybrid and all-wheel drive.
Oh, that's a big one.
So you can go hybrid, get up to 47 miles a gallon. You can tow, I believe, up to 4,000 pounds.
Yeah, up to 4,000.
And you can do that with an all-wheel drive. So you've got really no excuse. And most of our customers we see that transition into a Maverick are not always coming from a truck. There's a percentage that are coming from a truck, but a lot are from a car or from an SUV. It might mean a little hobby farm, have them need a little hobby pickup bed. So that's what we're seeing there. So stop by and check out the Lobo or any other options Maverick-wise.
Absolutely.
So today we dive in about pivoting and finding niche pieces in your business. And I'll start this off. We'll start kind of with a base So we get everybody thinking. Now, you got to remember, as you're listening to this podcast, we've been in business for 79 years.
Oh.
Now, we wouldn't have been in business for 79 years. I'm not tooting our own horn, but if we weren't successful. But that doesn't mean that we just keep doing things and we keep putting the record on repeat. So we're always trying to look at our business and our areas on where we can improve. And some of that comes from recognizing signs on when to adjust, how to refine what you've been doing, and then trying to pivot, which we've pivoted a whole lot. You know, we got stories on stories about that.
Yeah.
But then also trying to find a niche in your business. And almost you take that niche and you throw it in the first part. And the niche is not always necessarily the lowest price. Or it might not be the only one that offers up that product. Now, some of y'all are in business and you do have that option and that luxury that nobody else has your product. Well, that's your niche. In our business, for example, our niche isn't that we have the only F-150 nobody else can get, or we have the only Wrangler that nobody else can get. So we have to look farther than that because we don't want it to just be about price. We want to be competitive. We want to help out. But then what is our niche there? Before we go into that, I would say the first part is recognizing signs or indicators on when you need to pivot or when you need to adjust.
Okay.
Now, my biggest thing there, and then I'm gonna kick it to you guys, will be if you don't step away from your business and away from the day-to-day hustle and bustle, you'll never see it.
Okay.
And we've all been there, and I think you guys can relate, is you get in the middle of it, and you're ingrained, and you're putting in the 12, 14, 16 hours, hammering away. The numbers look good. You think everything is great. You can't see it because your mind is consumed with the day-to-day activities, and that's where we found real value when we step away from the business, go to an outside meeting, even if it's just a conference we go to, and then we get to collaborate. We get around those other like-minded people. They're like, shoot, I never thought about that. Maybe we do need to refine our process. Maybe we do need to adjust. What are y'all's takes there?
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head whenever you talk about being able to step back and really look at it. You sometimes, and it's no different than we've talked in previous episodes of you're growing, and when it's your baby, your business, you're growing, there's a little bit of fear of loss of, hey, we're going to lose a little bit of productivity. I'm going to have to step back. But we've talked about this. If you enable the rest of your team to be able to produce, even though it's at a lower level, it's going to produce way more than you ever could running yourself into the ground. So being able to step back and look at that, you can really see what needs to be adjusted that you would never see. You would never see, because in our mind, we sit back and we say, we'd never let that happen in our business. Our family-owned business, we would never let that happen. It's happening if you are not taking the time to circle around and go through service, go through parts, talk to customers. And you can only do that if you make that part of your daily routine activity, go through and be able to talk to people. That's the only way that you can effectively manage and do all the different areas.
I think that's twofold of something you said and then something you said, Taylor. So you talking, Taylor, about walking through and checking things out. More oftentimes, and I love reports and I love stats. They help, they're KPIs. They keep you understanding where you're at. But also, if you can get the word from the horse's mouth, and sometimes there's just being a fly on the wall. You know, coming out of Ultimate Challenge, you know, some weeks back, that was a big thing of ours, is really being involved. Like I would, you know, on Fridays and Saturdays, I wanted to be at the desk and I was appraising the trades so I could be in the middle of it, one, to help the team accomplish the goal, because there was way more traffic than everyone was used to.
Sure.
But it also allowed us to see no one's bringing a tattle report or no one's bringing a damage report. You're seeing it live. So then you can make adjustments on the fly.
Sure.
You know, so that little niche that needs adjustment there. So you can do that from within your business without that being your daily task, because you've tasked those people. Secondly, Matt, you said about hopping away so you can get away from your business. Remember, you've tasked other people to be able to handle those things so you can get away. It's important that you can see that from outside the trees, but also if you surround yourself with like-minded people, then they might be in the same style business or just in business general handling people. And then you can say, I never thought about it like that, right? It's just a total different perspective because they're in a whole different pond.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about in like-minded ponds with different ponds, and they're like, what about this? Have you guys started seeing putting flatbeds on trucks? You know, and you're like, I hadn't really thought about that. I'm just stuck in the grind of it. And so doing that really will help you maybe see opportunity.
I agree. Those are such great points. And maybe you're listening on the other end of that and you're like, oh, that sounds great. And I've been there, so this is why I'm going to go down this road. That sounds great, but I don't have anybody to connect with. I only have 5 employees. I can't leave town for 3 or 4 days to go to a conference. Let me tell you, there are hundreds of podcasts out there. We want you to keep listening to ours, but there's hundreds out there of other people that have been highly successful, or get on Clubhouse or get in different Facebook groups, and they'll talk to you about it. You listen to it on your way to work or go to check on the job sites, and you're like, oh, shoot, I never thought about that.
Yep.
Or I'll tell you another one. I've had, you can call it writer's block. I don't really write, but you can call it writer's block or management or leadership block. Creativity block.
Yes.
And I've had an issue going on at work, and I just can't really figure out what the right direction is or how to fix it. And I'll go on a run, and 30 or 45 minutes into the run, when my mind has calmed down, it'll come to me like that. Now, it usually doesn't ever come to me if I just sit down and eat food for lunch. I got to be on an activity, whether it's riding a bike or you're swimming or you're running or you're working out, whatever it may be. I'm just telling you, even if you just step away for an hour, get out of the atmosphere, your brain, it'll come to you. If you can shut out the rest of the noise, it'll be there. And you're educated enough, but you've just got to shut the noise out and let your brain start processing, what do I do for my company? What do I do for my leadership here to be able to grow the department and to change?
That's really good, because you saying that is like, because we've all done that at different levels. What happens when you do that? Like when you go to a meeting and you can't run to Jordan's office, and you can't run to service, and you can't run to the sales tower. You can't pull those levers to fix those things, and you've only sent X amount of text. Or if you go run, everything gets simplified.
It does.
If you go run or if you go exercise, your brain gets to a point where it only can compute so much. And so, like you said, it takes out the noise, and then you're just like, there it is. It's right there, right? I didn't even recognize that, right? But you can take that away, so you're not, you'll be working on your business without working in your business, and then you're like, bing, got it.
There it is.
That's it right there. And then take notes. Make sure you write it down. Take notes. Even if it's a voice text, or like, just voice notes. Because if you are doing something strenuous, there's a decent chance that you might forget the details.
I can tell you that. I'm glad you bring up that point, because early on, I thought in my brain, I'd convinced myself, I'll remember that.
It was crystal clear.
Crystal clear. And then all of a sudden I get a big hill or something to run up and didn't get finished. And somebody asked me a question and I can't remember it. So now
I had the greatest idea.
I know. Like, what was that? I had this great idea. It'll come back to me. So now as I'm running, I'll just holler at my phone. I'll just holler at Siri, take notes.
Yeah.
And then that starts happening.
Yes.
And then it's there. And even if it's jumbled up and not perfect, it's trigger points.
It's the triggers. That took some time, to figure out how to do that. But then it's like, oh, that was so easy.
Yeah. No different than if I'm listening to a podcast on a run and some takeaways come. I'll pause and the same thing, voice text that over to myself. Hey, but I want to go to another real world example of where success may be clouding opportunity. We noticed this during Ultimate Challenge. One of the things we did as brothers and as a management team was, okay, we've done this big sell before, but how do we elevate that? And not just from hoorah, not just from marketing, not just a bigger number, but actually managing and giving our managers the tools they need to be able to push their team. One of the reports we went over each week had the salespeople and their goals. It also had the overall department. Now, most people would manage by overall department, and they would see it. And Taylor, your team absolutely killed it during Ultimate Challenge, and you were ahead of the goal like all month long. But what those reports showed is overall as a department, you were ahead, but you had 4 or 5 people that were behind. So then that helped identify for you to be able to tell your managers, this is who you need to go spend extra time with.
Absolutely. It was big there, and I love being able to see it because it was a nice way of you slowly reminding and saying that, hey, there's a little bit more. There's a little bit more. There's a little bit more. And it's not a big number, and the number was huge. We hit a number that we never thought we could. We blew way past it, and it shows you, hey, this is attainable only because you looked at each individual piece of the 20-plus sales guys we have. Whenever you're looking at, hey, I need 2 from you, I need 1 from you, I need 3 from you, I need 4 from you. Well, that's whenever we looked up on our days and we could do 20 to 30 to 40 cars because you delegated. No different than delegating your task. It goes from your highest level of a manager down to your lot porter.
Yep.
You have to delegate, and that's the only way that you become extremely and highly successful. And that's what we did. It was just every day a little bit more. And our guys that were hitting on all cylinders, that we were well past their goal, hey, you just adjust it just a little bit. And what it did to those guys that made it attainable, they could grab it every single day, and they in turn hit the biggest goal they ever thought they could.
Now, that was good, but you wouldn't know if you didn't have the KPIs. So
Correct.
it's a balancing act. And Shelby talked about that earlier about pulling up reports. You got to have that to have a starting place, but then you got to go get around it to actually hear what's really going on. The numbers say this, but I need to hear what's really going on so then I can make my adjustment.
It starts the conversation with proper education. You know, and then a lot can develop from there, you know, whether it be one of our micro meetings or a meeting that we have with the team or a quick, hey, how's it going? You can start out with that informative information that people learn to expect. And then people also understand the metric where it's coming from. And then you can say, and from here we go, what needs help? What needs assistance? You know, and so that's a really good thing there.
We've talked quite a bit about pivoting throughout the episodes. You know, if you hadn't heard, whether it's through adversity or through things that have happened in our business. And I really want to hit the high part of pivoting here is just be ready to pivot. Be ready to pivot. Don't just sit there and, you know, complain and this and that if something's happened. Pivot. Look for opportunities. You know, in our business, if we don't have inventory to sell and we hadn't gone out and bought it or whatever else, and people aren't buying as many cars, what means they're keeping their cars. So there should be more service opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen that before. You know, or if we're low on used cars, we got to pivot and go to new cars. Or new cars are low, we got to pivot and go to used cars. Or we got to look and pivot and offer up different options, you know, as far as service contracts and so on and so forth. Whatever it may be, we've pivoted into buying cars off the road and paid our salespeople for that.
Yeah.
Lots of different ways that you can pivot. If you just step back and go, okay, here's the cards we're dealt. Now, how do we pivot? Where can we maximize?
You know, a thing that I'll say that was driven by the manufacturer is in the past years, Ford has come on with remote services. It stemmed from COVID. So remote services going out into the community and doing the work. And so we had to buy a van, expensive van, that had the ability to do all these things.
Sure.
Over $150,000 invested plus 2 people to operate this thing. And this van is upfitted to be able to do everything, you know, tire rotation, oil change. But while we looked at oil changes we watch it very carefully to make sure our price is right on the money. You know, it's no different than Walmart end caps. Like, those are their price leaders to get you in the door to say, hey, these are really good prices. I can trust this place, as you should. And so it's the same thing. And then we got to looking like, oil changes will not pay the bills for this $150,000 van plus 2 technicians. And so, you know, we were like, okay, what do we do? One, we had to hit a metric. Ford had set a standard for remote services that we had to be able to hit. We said, okay, without throwing everything out, because we have to hit it. This is not a decision, do we want to or not? We have to. But this is not something that pencils to make cents or dollars. So then we looked to see what other opportunities of recalls.
Yes.
Where it was not a customer expense by any means, but, you know, some people say, oh my gosh, Ford has so many recalls. And I say, oh my gosh, we have so much opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, people don't like the idea to get a recall. One, could be a safety concern, or 2, it's just a burden. Like, I got this car, it has an issue. Why in the heck do I have to go sit in the dealership? This is not fun. And so then we got to take a not fun situation, and we got to take a non-profitable situation, and we said, hey, let's go out to these people at their home, at their work, at their school, and let's use this van to perform these recalls. We could perform them much faster. We could find groups of businesses that had X amount of vehicles. We could find rental fleets. And so that was kind of finding a niche to repivot something we were already doing in our business.
That's great, because I know there's a lot of people, you know, even in our industry, they're still sitting on the sidelines going, it doesn't pencil. Why did I spend $150,000 on a van just to do oil changes? And how wonky is it to do an oil change? And you look at it and go, well, hang on, here's an opportunity. You know, Ford may have wanted us to do this, and I hear you on that, but I think there's even a bigger opportunity over here.
Yeah, and that came by being in groups of people to say, hey, how's your remote services coming? What are you doing? What's successful? And we had all these meetings, and it's like sometimes in those meetings I'm like, yeah, I hear you, and then sometimes I'm like back up, slow down. I'm like, I've heard this. I'll listen to it again. I'm like, what else could we do? And it might have been just like a flash that came across and was like, hey, Ford releases another 800,000 recalls. I'm like, we could do that, right? Because we were limited on how much oil we could carry, and we have huge tanks on this thing, but you could only do so many oil changes, and the more you did, the more it cost you money. But then you also had to pump the old oil back into the van, then you had to come back and pump it back off, and you had to guarantee these guys time. It was like, what if we just carried like 20 of this recall part, 20 of these recall parts?
Sure.
You could knock out as many as you wanted, because most of them are 20 to 45 minutes.
Yep.
And one was downloading, you could be installing, and then you could be downloading and then installing. And so it was just opportunity.
That's good. So let's talk a little bit about, before we move on, about niche. And in our business, I'll set the stage, and then y'all can talk about some of the niche stuff we have done, not only overall throughout our years, but then also when we moved, we were able to build some stuff in. Our business is arguably one of the most transparent, competitive businesses there are out there. And our listeners may not know this, but it's actually regulated federally that every single dealer pays the identical amount on new vehicles.
Yep.
So no matter if you're in Alaska, California, Florida, or Arkansas, you pay the same amount for the F-150, the Wrangler, the Escape, the Ram 2500. The only difference is that they can change is the amount for delivery, how far you are from the factory.
Yep.
Also, rebates, they're connected to your zip code. So that old saying out there, I can go to Dallas, or that one time I went to New York, I got a better deal. That's not the truth, because your rebates are connected to your zip code. Plus, we're one of the only industries that you can go online and figure out the invoice price and this and that. So we're at a very highly competitive. It's not like we can order, hey, if we order 500 F-150s tomorrow, we'll get a better deal. Because if we could, we would.
Yeah.
We'd stockpile those suckers. So we've had to figure out other ways to find a niche.
Yeah.
Besides just lowest price, and we've got 10 F-150s available. But we built a lot of that into our new store, didn't we?
Yeah, we built a whole lot so that, like the experience. So when people showed up, they were like, I've seen Ford before, but something's different here.
Yep.
I've seen a Jeep store before. So from initial, when you drive by, you see our huge car vending machine, our vehicle display tire, you're like, something's different.
Yep.
And then when you go to pull in, single entrance, you're going to see all of our vehicle display pads. And you're going to start out with the big rock of the Bronco rock and the Jeep rock, and be like, something's different.
Yeah.
And then our service drive is the first entrance that come in. Then when you get to talk to the people and talk to the flow, then you talk about the Lewis Guarantee. So then that's definitely different.
Sure. Like on the Lewis Guarantee, like on a new vehicle, we're doubling the factory warranty.
Yeah. So when Ford says we're done at 5 years or 60,000 miles, we say, let's double that. And it was real. Like we researched this for years to make sure this was tangible, that a customer could claim it anywhere. It was a zero cost to the customer, that it was actually rubber met the road. So now we doubled it to a 10-year, 120,000 mile powertrain warranty that was free 99 to the customer, and they could claim it anywhere. And it didn't have all these exclusions, like had to do every single service interval. Still need to service your car, but had to do every single service interval at our dealership. Like, let's make this real and tangible and different.
I think when we looked at that, especially the Lewis Guarantee, we flipped it, looked at it not from a business standpoint, but a customer standpoint.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know, what's in it for them. And they need to know, like, hey, I hope they stay in Northwest Arkansas, and I hope they keep servicing with us. But life happens.
Yeah.
And if they move to California or Chicago or down to Dallas, our Lewis Guarantee is still good there. We'd love for you to service with us, but there's nothing silly connected to it. Like you got to come for a 1-year checkup. And if you decline anything we say, it's voided. That's not how we do business.
And you say that, but most of them are.
And that's what
we found.
Yeah, that a lot of the other ones have the hoops and this and that. And then all of a sudden, oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't qualify. So that's not us.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing, Taylor, you can walk them through, when they come to get an oil change with us, there's a couple things we do from pulling in to the alignment.
Yeah.
And then when we finish with their car, gets to run through one of your favorites.
Oh, yeah.
And they can't find that at the quick lube down the road or at the Walmart.
No, not only being reputable and us taking care of it, and if a mistake happens, which on here I will tell you, if you're in business, mistakes happen. It's how you handle the situation whenever it happens, what defines your whole process, because they're going to happen. And the reason why someone comes and trusts a reputable business is so whenever it does happen, it's not a quick lube, jiffy lube, anything down the road. They're going to say, hey, you're on your own. We checked that. No, we made a mistake. I'm going to make this right, and we'll take care of it. But Matt was talking about, they come in, they get in a free alignment. So you can see right then and there, hey, my tires are aligned. They're not aligned. Let's catch the problem before it eats through a whole set of tires. Then you roll straight into getting your oil change, multi-point inspection, tire rotation in there. Then once you're done there, it rolls through our own VIP car wash club. So it comes out, vehicle's clean, ready to go. And I love that whole process in there because it's been really fun to be able to have that and offer that to all of our customers.
I think those are just a couple great examples of niche areas we found in a highly competitive market where when you're in the middle of it, like, what do you want me to do niche? You know, everybody gets the same Escape and the same F-150 and the same this and the same that. It's like, okay, hang on, back up from it for a second. What else could we offer to give it to the customer? And then, of course, you know, our niche is we've been here for 79 years. And when you spend money with us, we prioritize that we reinvest the money here locally. So if you go to your kid's sports game or you go to a field or you go to a nonprofit, you'll see us there. You'll see us sponsoring so people can feel good about, well, that's why I choose to spend money with them, is because they're reinvesting it back at a local level. And large corporations can't do that.
No,
they just can't.
Yeah.
You know, they do it maybe on a national Red Cross or whatever else it may be, but we do it boots on the ground, ingrained into our local community where it matters.
Yeah, and I love it because I had a customer this past month that we'd messed up in the shop. We took ownership of it and went into, and there are two different types, and there's so many businesses that come and go into business. Like, hey, I want to own my own business. That's great. Anything. There's a whole lot of new ideas that come out there, and I commend you on wanting to go out and figure out your own business. If you want to be in the you own a business route and be in that game, you have to be involved. And we choose to do that every single day. That's why we're different, and that's why when you're talking about niche, yeah, we've got all this other stuff, but the other absolute dark horse that we can share our practices, our policies, our things, they don't have the X factor of being able to have, yes, we're blessed to be able to be three brothers that work together, but being able to work through it, being able to be involved, it's a lot of hours. If you want to be in this business, it's a lot of hours. And that's the difference you're able to make whenever you hear things, whenever you see things, whenever hey, we want to help this baseball team. We want to help this school. So it was so fun. And me to confidently go through with the customer and say, hey, no, this is what we're doing. This is how I'm here to help you. No one else would do this of a corporation. You could say you were going to X, Y, and Z, and they wouldn't care. I sponsor all these people because I want to pour back in the community that we're a part of, and you can only do that if you're fully, fully involved. So that's really the niche sort of where I look at of an X factor of having us in here. All the great things we have, but being able to work together and being able to help make the process better than it could possibly be if you weren't involved.
Now that's good. Okay, we got to get to our automotive fun fact quiz of the week. Now, when I read this one, you know, I went back a few years because this was really exciting, like when you get your first car. You know, what was the first commercially available car radio brand? So we're talking aftermarket, put it in the car, you know, whether it was cassette or your 8-track or CD player in my case. And it says, here's our options here. A, Sony, B's Jensen, C's Motorola, and D is Autotech. I can't believe they didn't list here, you know, what my preferred, the one when I was growing up, is you needed an Alpine, you know. And I think I saved up forever just to get an Alpine in my 85 Mustang. But we'll come back to see, since Alpine's not on there, we got to pick one of those other four.
It's not gonna be that.
Absolutely. Rolling straight into the pivoting process. So we've talked kind of signs of why you would want to move or what you would want to move or how it's different. But this is kind of rolling into the process. So of going through, and we're going to talk about a couple of different things, but talking about what you're involved in, staying authentic to your brand. So one of y'all rolling into that, but staying authentic to your brand, not getting sidetracked from what you're in the market of doing and what you're really wanting to do.
Yeah, so one of the pivoting pieces I'll take, and we've talked about this previously, but I'm going to bring it back up. We're still in the brand of selling cars,
Yes.
delivering cars. But as the business evolved and as all this technology came out in business, I can remember when I first started in the business. That's not like it was that long ago. When you did a delivery of a vehicle, you showed somebody how to program their garage door opener. You showed them how to do the presets on their radio, how to change the clock when time adjustment happened, and maybe a memory seat. And that was it.
Yes.
That was it. We evolved to now, and there's multiple computers. You got a huge process to go through. We pivoted there because we recognized that the traditional salesperson, one, they didn't have the technology mindset or the patience to hook up an iPhone 8, an Android, a Samsung, and an iPhone 16 or 17, at the same time, and then some customers want to spend 15 minutes, some want to spend 2 hours.
Yep.
And we've got to be able to adapt to that. So how we pivoted is we removed that off the salesperson, still staying true to our brand and selling cars in our way, but then we hired people that were delivery specialists. We paid them on the delivery themselves. They're not thinking about selling the next car, and they were able to spend the time that's necessary, and we evolved with the automotive business for today's times.
I think a big thing there, and you guys both said brand multiple times, of our brand. And generally when you think brand, and when we say advertising, we speak of tier 1, that's manufacturer, tier 2, that's your locality, tier 3 is dealership, and tier 4 is the employees at the dealership. When you say brand, I think the same thing, right, wrong, or indifferent. But when you say brand, I think what we get to have fun with and what we built into our whole thing is we're in the experience business. And that becomes our brand. 79 years of doing business in Northwest Arkansas is great. 4 generations is great. But as we often say in sales training with them, what's in it for me? The customer doesn't really care. Like that didn't help old businesses survive, right? That didn't overly help Radio Shack just because. And so we get to develop this experience. It's no different than going to Branson or going to Las Vegas. They all have shows, right? But the one that has the best experience is the one that people continue to go to, that they'll continue to refer their friends to, they'll continue to go back to for the next season or when they want another experience. So I think that's what we get to develop as our brand, the Lewis Automotive brand. And it's the brand of the experience that you get from the car wash to the complimentary alignment check to the cappuccino machine to the friendly people that you get to build that relationship with, from the remote services and kind of all the way across the entire platform of 260 plus employees of that experience. And so I think we continue to pivot in our construction process. We said, how do we build that brand, our brand of the experience, into a customer experience? And I think we listen to the market, which is not our brand, but it's our higher tier brand. And so then we see, okay, what do people see? What do manufacturers push? And then how do we develop that into our brand? And so that was part of our pivot process of taking our brand, taking it up a notch.
You bet.
It's a new level. It's a new excitement. And how do we keep that experience?
Yeah, and I would roll into, so if your market, knowing your brand, staying authentic to that, what about some lessons learned and any insights on things that we kind of have tried in the pivoting process, but maybe had to step back and go a different direction?
Yeah, that'll happen for sure.
Yes.
But I have to remind myself this, and I am one of those people that I'm quick to think and to pause and slow to react. And there's some times that I've missed some things that I should have just thrown it out there and go, it's okay if you make a mistake. It's okay if you don't have it all lined out. And I'm constantly working on that. Now, I try to find a happy medium going, hey, I don't always have to knee-jerk reaction. I never want to get to that because the building's not always on fire.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I need to think about it for a week. There's a lot of times where I could sleep on it or give it an hour.
Yeah.
But if it's an easy, monotonous decision, I've got to make it right then.
Yeah.
But there have been times that then something's passed us by because I've waited too long to make a decision.
Yeah.
Or there's been other times where we've segmented things off, whether it was a service process or a sales process. We thought on paper it was going to look great this way, and then it didn't work, and that's okay. And then we had to pivot and move on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's no different. We talked about on an episode that fun store we opened up that was called Top Gear. If you ever came into it, it was a whole lot of fun. We had a ton of traffic. People came in and looked at the muscle cars and the Broncos and the Jeeps and all the hot rods and this and that. We had more traffic than the new car store, but it didn't convert into dollars.
No.
Because not that many people. It was almost like we should just charge a museum entrance, fee, because they came by and the dad and son came by.
Oh, yeah.
It just didn't work.
No.
So then after a while, we just had to look at the numbers. Hey, it's okay. It didn't work. Let's pivot. Let's move forward.
Absolutely.
I think you definitely have to think like, I totally get and understand as a leader, you have to make sure kind of like you have a roadmap planned of like, if I try something new, I don't want to feel silly saying, I don't really know. We're going to figure it out. That seems unplanned. That seems willy-nilly. On the other hand, we miss out on opportunities because we're looking for that plan or that, like you might not make that correct stock buy or you didn't get as an early investor in that because you're like, I don't know. Because you have to keep in mind how big the decision, when you're looking at pivoting, how many people does it affect?
Yes.
So if it's a small scale thing, like take risks, and then be willing to measure it and then pull plug when it's necessary, right? Don't be scared if it's not something that's overly affecting everyone. I'm not saying go change everyone's health benefits plan, just like, oh, this looks cool, found it on the internet, do it. Like, no, that affects everyone. But there's some things out there that we've been able to try that sometimes you're like, this seems like I should give it a whirl. Let's put it on a no contract, month-to-month basis, and then really keep our thumb on it and be like, hey, this was great. Like, let's push some more chips in there. Or like, hey, you know what? We actually didn't really even tell anybody about this. It's been running on the side or in the background. Let's pull the plug there. So you have to, in those things, be willing to fail. You have to be willing to fail, but just know don't ride the ship to the ground. Do not ride the like, no, I'm in it. I'm going to, this is the greatest and I'm committed. I got to do it. Hang on. It's okay to fail. And then say, whoop, hang on. Let's not just bankrupt the thing.
I think that's a really good point you bring up, but yet tough for leaders, and I would say including us as well, is especially if it's your idea and you put a ton of research in it and then it's not working. You feel like I don't want to fail. And, you see this in large companies. We talk about this with Walmart all the time, where at one store, they might be using a drone to deliver and the other one's a slingshot or something to deal. And they're doing this or that. We started working on that in other departments. Is like, hey, just start with this department, pilot it. And then if it works, we'll go everywhere else. I love the filter, I'm going to call it, that you just brought up. Is one of the telltales is how many people does it affect? And you got to kind of think about chess a little bit. Does this affect everybody? Is this a disruptor, where we could be changing an entire process? Or if it's just within one department or two or three, let them run with it and see what happens. It's no different than in order for us to change our main software, like a CRM or an AMS, like it's got to be pretty concrete that makes sense because 300 people have got to change, adapt. A website's the same thing. But to change a plug-in on how to evaluate your trade online, that's not a big deal.
You don't really have to tell anybody.
You don't at all. So I think you got to run it through those filters as a leader, but then be willing, like you said, to make that step. And it's okay if you fail. And we love talking about sports analogies, but how many people do you hear that they talked about how many times they failed to be able to get to that success?
And no one's really remembering how many times you failed. They're just remembering the wins. And you said, like, sometimes as leaders, it's hard to do that. The first time you do it will be the hardest. It will be the hardest time because you'll be like, oh, man, what are they going to think about? Like, if I say, hey, here's where, because we do that in our process, like, hey, here's how we're going to praise trades or here's how we're going to write people up. And then it changes. And you're like, now they're going to think I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, no, hey, I learned from that. There's a much more efficient. I'm so sorry. I was making you go around the building to the right. Let's go counterclockwise. That's way faster.
I think it's so important there as a leader to acknowledge the point that you need to be able to pivot there, but then you bring the insight, bring the light. It's okay to give somebody an attaboy, and it doesn't matter what level they're at, because remember, we've talked about in previous episodes of always encouraging ideas to come to you, and that's how whenever surrounding people around you, how you continue to grow and cultivate good ideas. So whenever you do something wrong or see that you need to adjust, call it, pat them on the back, say, hey, yeah, let's keep going. And that's yourself as a leader growing your whole team and moving them forward there. So huge deal in the pivoting process. I love that whole area there, staying authentic to your brand, listening to the market, lessons learned and insights. So that's big there. We got to get back to the fun fact of the day.
Let's put a radio in. What's this on?
The first commercially available, like
That was Sony. Dad had
that you had like a tape that you just pull out here. That was side.
Definite. Hopefully they pivot away from that quickly.
It's like blank put or something, but coming through either Sony, Jensen, Motorola, or Autotech.
I would have gotten this one wrong.
The first commercial available car audio brand.
Yeah.
I would have picked like Autotech. Just like I don't really even know what stereos they did.
It just sounded old.
Yeah.
It sounded old. But that's not right.
That's not the right answer. The right answer is Motorola, and I would not have thought. I would have thought that was obviously the first in-car phone. I would thought of a Jensen or something else. Motorola, the first car radio that commercially was available was a Motorola, debuted in 1930.
Wow.
Are you serious, Clark?
Yes.
Okay.
Luxury item. All right. Now, as we segment into this final segment here, our journey, our niche, and how it's changed over the years. You know, so I talked about our experience. You know, that's our brand, or at least in my mind, our brand is Lewis Brothers. There's always an owner or one of us in the store that you could talk to.
You bet.
And that becomes the entire culture of the organization. And so people enjoy what they're doing. I would say yesterday we pre-record this. I'm sure you guys know this, but finishing the Ultimate Challenge, it was an 18-hour day. And if without a good culture and a good group of people around, it will eat you up. I left before my family was awake, and I got to bed after they were asleep. But the people around, like some of our new managers and new salespeople, were so excited. We hit so many personal bests and so many new records. And they were like, I've never been a part of so many people working together, selling so many cars and have a fun experience. So understanding our journey and our niche, what are some of the adjustments you think we've made to grow this far?
I think one of the things we've really learned, especially as we've moved, is what we were doing, is that scalable? And I'm sure y'all can remember being in meetings, and some people, I don't know that they really took me seriously until we said it multiple times. It's like, okay, what you're doing now, could you do that if you doubled or tripled your volume?
Yeah.
You know, and so you got to plant that seed. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? We sell 150 to 200 per store. Well, what if you sold 400?
Yeah.
Would that process work?
Like, don't try to figure out how to sell 400 in this moment.
Correct.
But if you did, that's where most people get home.
That is, they wait to try to plan for growth during the growth.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to put the systems in place not only for today, but where we're going.
Because you can scale it, but if you've got the system.
If you got the system, then it's like, we've been training for this. We know what play to put in place. We've been practicing.
Yeah.
This thing's got enough bandwidth that you just keep going.
Yep.
And that's what we've talked about a lot since we've moved, and we've changed a whole lot because of that. Because really, our systems were maxed out.
We have changed so much, from hiring a high caliber HR director to then seeing, hey, he's chasing some things that don't need his attention. Let's get him an assistant.
Yep.
To then, hey, let's get a high caliber office manager, controller, and then get another office manager.
Yep.
And then, hey, we're clicking enough buttons on our phones trying to figure out social media and trying to, favor this and Canva that. Let's get a full-blown marketing team. And we keep scaling from, hey, parts department process manual and standard and operating procedures within service and sales.
Yep.
It continues to grow.
I mean, same way how we appraise our trades, how they go in there, how we process people that are going to finance, how we get them out, the follow-up, and we're not done yet.
And none of them are sit it and forget it. You have to know that.
I think that's important. We didn't talk about that earlier, and I was going to bring that up, but you do have to remember, like, don't be scared to fail, but also don't just throw it out there and then hope it works.
Yeah.
It needs leadership. That's why there's a coach. They try to put in a new play. the coach might say, okay, I drew it up and it looked like it was going to work, but so-and-so can't quite make that pivot.
They're going to blow the whistle and they're going to show it to them again. Your learning pyramid. They're going to say, run it again.
Yep.
And run it again. And run it again. Remember, it's going to take on average 90 days to create a new habit. So if you're changing your process,
Yes.
who moved my cheese, it's going to take constant attention of like, ooh, you know what? Maybe we'll flip these two. You're not, you're not fast enough pulling guard. That's okay. You're a better blocker pulling down, and let's do this. But then staying after it, showing the all the little things.
You must make sure, though, when you do that, that you have created a culture and an atmosphere where your employees are not intimidated and will share with you feedback.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Because so many people, they have not opened it up where employees are comfortable saying, hey, I know you went over this, boss, but what about this? And you really, to get that started, you got to ask them, not give your opinion. As a leader, you need to be the last one that talks, no different than the last one that eats. To be able to get their opinion, you need their feedback, so then you're adjusting. And you kind of really go into it that way too. You say, hey, we're putting this in place. We've all vetted it. Some of y'all have been in the focus group and we've talked about it, but there's going to be some adjustment, and I need everybody's feedback so we can make it tailor-made for our culture and what we're trying to achieve.
And I think you got to know, whenever you're building and changing policies and processes, it's not going to just fit in like a gear in a transmission that's just humming along.
It's not happening.
It is going to be bumpy, and it's okay. Build the team, have the open talk, everything else that's controlled and structured. I don't want people just jabbering to jabber, say, hey, this didn't work, this doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. No, have controlled process, structure, everything that goes into it, and realize that with change comes difficulty, process, stepping forward, everything else, and it's good. Listen to us talking about changing in just a year's time, moving over here. It's been a lot of like, we sat back and like, what are we doing? What are we doing? But then we see a little bit of light and it's going there, and we're like, okay. And then we hit a big month and it's like, oh, that kind of worked pretty good there. All right, we can change this or change that. So it's good to know that, hey, there's some difficulty, but it's better.
That's a really good point. As we grew and said, okay, we need more processes, more procedures, which meant more people. And so there's been many of end of months, middle of months, every days of the months, I'm sitting there scratching my head at the numbers of like, we have doubled or tripled our business. But after we've paid all these people for all the things we've hired, where the business, me, you guys are making less money
Just say it.
than we did on Old Faithful over there.
Yeah, so
it was
gosh.
Because who can we talk to? I'm not going to talk to my wife about this, right? Like, no, honey, you can go buy Target once a month. Please.
Hey, we just hit our goal, but I made less.
Yeah. And so, I'm like, man, and then I'm like, hey, Matt, and he's like, oh, yeah, you want to see how we did at Chrysler? And I'm like, all right, okay, I'll keep to myself. I'll just be over in the corner yelling at myself. And so it's one of those things you have to, but every once in a while you get light at the time and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
that guy's doing really good and he's making a lot of good money, so you're proud of him, and there's wins in there. So it's a long-term play there.
That's the key.
This ain't no Amazon FBA, sit at home and you're underpants and
I'm not
outsource something.
We do not sit on disclaimer. We do not sit on the beach and let the business keep running.
No.
Perfect if you do that. That's everyone's business dream.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
thank you.
I think it's a long-term, like you said there, Shelby, and I have to remind myself this, and we talk about it, but, there's a lot of businesses out there that offer growth, and you can take an Uber, you can take an Amazon, you can take any of their business models, and they really spend the time building what we call our units in operation.
Yeah.
Once we build our units in operation by selling the car, getting the trades, they go into service, we connect them with a Lewis guarantee. We're organically building this thing, not for these peaks and valleys, but for long term. So I can tell you guys what's going to happen is in 3 years, 5 years, all these people are going to be saying, how did they do that? They're so lucky. They've been in business that long. And it's like, no, peel back the layers and let's look and see what you did.
Yeah.
And, profitability, pay, so on and so forth. And everybody thinks it's just growing on trees. It's like, no, we're sacrificing this to get this down the road.
We hunker down, make it work, and I think that's a really good point there. Just learning lessons, adapting when necessary. And you said it earlier, Matt, but you said ask the people for feedback.
Yes.
And when you do that, be very cautious. Remember, 70 to 80% of your communication is nonverbal.
Yep.
Do not react and say, that's dumb, that's stupid, I've tried that, it didn't work. No way, nonsense, that's too expensive. Bite your tongue, put your best smile on possible, and take notes and say, okay, what else? And what else? Because they'll one time, I had a call last month. I was driving, going to a AAD meeting, and someone texted me, he's like, hey, where are you? It's a question that I hate. Like, I live my life at this store. Like, if you need something, ask me that question. And I said, can I call you? And they said, sure. And so I called, and they were like, hang on. And they were like, hey, would you want to know if this ex-employee wasn't happy and da-da-da? I was like, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I need to know that and tell me what's going on. Like, 'cause they're talking to them, not talking to me or you or you. And I was like, yeah, tell me about it. But you have to be very careful to not say, no, here's how you fix it. Or like, they shouldn't be doing this, or like not reacting to it. So you have to just take it all in. And then you can filter out the fluff, or like, no, that would never work. Like Wayne would say, I'm going to just keep throwing ideas at you.
Yeah.
And every 1,000, one of them will stick. And he knew, like, you'd say, Wayne, that's silly. Like, no, I'm going home. It's 10 o'clock. But you have to not overreact, because right then they'll be like, I knew I shouldn't have brought him an idea. That was stupid.
That's
This made
really
me feel
important.
stupid, you know?
That goes back to your listening to listen or listen to respond.
Yes.
And some of y'all out there that your meetings and your feedback, you're going, oh my gosh, I do that right now. My meetings, I talk the whole time. I ask at the very end if anybody has feedback or comments, and nobody ever says anything.
Yeah.
You need to change your structure.
Yeah.
And it's not going to automatically happen. You're not going to say a meeting and be like, I need everybody's input today while it's going to happen. Like you said, you're going to have to go around the room and ask for inputs.
Yeah.
Hey, what's one takeaway? What's one thing you need help with? And then slowly but surely, you'll look up a couple months down the road, they're all speaking, you're taking notes, you recap it and give direction at the end.
Yeah, that's super solid. I love that. All right, frequently asked questions. We love asking them. We love answering them, even if we got to dig and find the next thing or whatever else. So question for you, Matt. What's the biggest business failure that you have faced or that sticks out in your mind?
Whew.
Largest business failure.
Well, I'll tell you recently. Let's talk recently.
Okay. Yeah.
So as we were scaling to move,
Yeah.
I ramped up, on the CDGR side, I ramped up on inventory massively.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I didn't know exactly who would come into the new store, what that scale would look like, and what they would need.
Mm-hmm.
I looked up, and we had 45 Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneers in stock
Those are pretty good price.
at an average cost of $101,000. Okay, that was over $5 million in that inventory alone. I looked up as the sales were going on, and I had really swung for the fences. Our monthly floor plan interest on the vehicles just sitting.
Borrow money to own.
Cost to borrow money just for the new inventory was $180,000 a month. Now that decreases profitability pretty big.
Quickly.
About dollar for dollar.
But as we've talked about in the thing, I could just pivot.
Yep. Yeah.
And we pivot, we put spiffs, we put massive discounts out there for the customer, and we've dwindled that down to 5.
So you gained a customer, your salespeople got to sell a car,
Yes.
finance got to process through, we got to trade in, went through the shop, then we had a good used trade. So that was the pivot, instead of saying, no,
Exactly.
this is eating my lunch, because it will very quickly eat your lunch.
And the raw still happened, just not in front of all the employees. You know what I mean? As I sat in the room, I was like, holy cow.
I'm going to go for a longer run.
I thought we were going to make money this month, and we didn't. Where's the problem? There it was. How do I attack it?
Long-term business here. All right, so Taylor, in the opposite, what's the biggest win as of all time and or lately in business that you've faced?
This took a long time, and we mulled this over and pushed. It was in the sales department. It was in the finance department. I have to shout this out. We just absolutely just came off of a banner record month. They hit a height that we never thought was possible.
Yeah.
Talked to the guy, our director of finance. He laughed at us whenever we gave the idea of the goal out there, and we blew past the goal.
Oh, yeah.
Only because we took the right time, we put the right person in there. And funny enough, We added another team member to the finance department, and we about ran their wheels off whenever we added the other team member in there. So it's got to be expanding in particular, the finance team. It took them to a new level and pushed it so far that it's knocking on the door close of expanding it here soon in the future again. So I love seeing that our process was there, the structure was there, we put it in, game plan, and it just went off to the races.
That's solid that's a win because it didn't come without struggles of the current finance people feeling like, hey, you're taking money out of my pocket.
Yeah.
So because you're taking business from that. We said, no, the customer experience is not as great. You remember we talked about we're selling the whole culture of the experience, and they're like, no, I can handle it. They were chipmunking. Right? And they're like, no, I can handle it. Like, no, I can see Mrs. Jones. She's been over for 3.5 hours, and we promised her a 90-minute process. We're hiring someone else. Yeah. And in the end, now they get to leave early, and now they get to take their days off, and then they can all still make a good living. So that's a solid window.
That's really a tough one. Those are good feedbacks on both of those. Hey, it's been fun. Our first episode in the new studio today.
Yeah.
We hope you guys have enjoyed it. Make sure to give us that feedback. You know, we're talking about feedback here. We want feedback. Our goal is to bring value to all the business leaders out there. So if there's a subject you want us to do a deeper dive into, or if there's things that we haven't covered, you're like, man, I wish they would cover that. Shoot us a note, shoot us a text, a message, or you can comment on any of these and it'll get to us. As always, please make sure to like, share, give us a comment on there, and let us know what we can do to help you out. That's a wrap for Crossroad Conversations today. Thank you, guys.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure and give it a like, share it with your friends and family, and visit our website to send us questions about what you would like to know about the automotive industry or family business in general. Who do you want to hear from? Send them our way, and we'll do our best to answer any questions that you have. Thank you again, and we'll see you in future shows.